You killed my mom?
What was the last time you saw your mom?
We just went to...
This was the exact moment that Kevin Davis's sister realized her own brother had done the unthinkable. When detectives sat down to speak with the man behind the horrific crimes, he laid it all out on the table, every last sickening detail.
I kind of wormed my hands into her brain to kind of just cut it. Oh yeah, I lost my virginity to a corpse. Oh yeah, bestiality is a thing of mine too. Mm-hmm. Now you know. I prefer my women dead. I was always into strangling, kind of try to work the head back on, perhaps. I'm a cruel, disgusting person.
Many documentaries and news sources haven't dared to disclose the brutal details of his crimes. When it isn't the murder itself that's the most gruesome thing about a case, you know you're dealing with an especially twisted individual, one who even left taunting notes behind for the police. Be advised that this video contains explicit and disturbing content that may not be suitable for all viewers. On March 27, 2014, the executive director of Girling Hospice, Celeste McGraw, received a call that made her uneasy. Her employee, Kimberly Hill, hadn't arrived at the nursing home where she was scheduled to care for patients that afternoon. Kimberly was noted to be a devoted, loving hospice nurse who would never abandon her patients and rarely missed work. Immediately, Celeste suspected something was deeply wrong. She dialed Kimberly's number, hoping to hear her voice on the other end, but the call went unanswered. When a fellow employee told Celeste that the police had called to see if Kimberly was at work during a wellness check of her, Celeste decided she couldn't anxiously wait by the phone for answers any longer. She and the director of patient care drove to Kimberly's home located at the Windrush Apartments in Corpus Christi, Texas, to try and get to the bottom of her unsettling and mysterious absence. But, to their horror, when they arrived at Kimberly's apartment, they found it awash in the red and blue lights of police cars outside the doors. Celeste pulled a police officer aside to ask questions, only to have them apologize and tell her that an incident had occurred. But they could not give further details at the time. Celeste had just spoken to Kimberly the day before on March 26th. Kimberly seemed to be in good spirits, and nothing was out of the ordinary. Now things were wildly different. The next day, Kimberly's 51st birthday was meant to be a day of celebration, a day to honor everything that Kimberly was. And indeed, there was a lot to honor. She was a devoted hospice worker and mother, and during the Gulf War, Kimberly was a Marine corporal who served as the only woman in her Saudi Arabian work sector. But instead of celebrating all that Kimberly was on that day, it will forever be marred by the horrific reality of what happened to her less than 48 hours before at the hands of a killer that no one could have ever suspected. The nightmarish, unbelievable story began around 10 a.m. on March 27th, just hours before Celeste even realized Kimberly was missing, when LaWanda and her husband Timothy were surprised by a knock at their door in Robstown, Texas, about 15 miles away from Kimberly's home in Corpus Christi. Usually, Timothy would have been at work by that time of the morning, but that day he decided to take time off and stay home. Had he not, LaWanda would have had to face the murderer on her front steps all alone. Outside, a young man stood on their front porch, looking calm but rather withdrawn and serious. Through a crack in the door, LaWanda asked what he needed. In response, he asked her to come closer. Not yet wholly alarmed, LaWanda opened the door. What he said next would change the peaceful day she had planned with Timothy entirely and chill her to the bone.
911, location emergency.
Yes, ma'am. Someone just knocked on my door. He's here at my door right now, and he wanted me to call 911 because he said he just murdered someone.
Okay, and he's there right now?
Yes, ma'am, and I'm scared.
And he said he murdered someone?
Yes.
Okay, is there any way that maybe I can speak to him?
Would you like to talk to 911 on the phone?
Sure. Hello?
So what's going on, sir?
So, as I said, I've murdered someone, actually.
After being asked for details about the murder, the man nonchalantly told Timothy that he had killed Kimberly Hill with a hammer. Timothy asked why, to which the man would only eerily respond with lots of reasons. The man refused eye contact with both Timothy and LaWanda and fixed his gaze on the road throughout their interaction. Police took quite some time to arrive. So long, in fact, that LaWanda called the police a second time, asking when they would arrive. While they anxiously waited, unsure of who exactly was standing at their doorstep, LaWanda offered the man a drink. In response, he told the couple that their kindness made him nervous because, according to him, no one had ever been nice to him before. When the police finally did arrive, the young man put his hands up, surrendering. He confessed once more to the deputy on the scene that he had murdered Kimberly with a hammer. Of course, that wasn't even half of the horrific truth of what he did. With his confession, the police took him in for questioning. Soon after, they reported to Kimberly Hill's apartment. They found the door locked, so they contacted a maintenance person to give them a key that would give them access to the apartment. What awaited the police behind the locked door would not only horrify them, it would weave a tale so tragic, so unbelievable, that it would appear like something straight out of a horror movie. Upon entering the home a little after 10 a.m. on the 27th, police were instantly met with a gory scene. The couch in the living room was marred with a large swath of blood. Next to it, some of Kimberly's blood-stained clothes lay in a pile. A trail of blood and what appeared to be drag marks led from the couch all the way down the hallway, one that was adorned with family photos of the smiling, happy family. The trail of blood led into the bedroom where officers found the body of Kimberly Hill on the bed. She had 18 lacerations to the head. Beside Kimberly on the carpet was a hammer, its handle smeared with blood, consistent with the young man's story. But that wasn't the only weapon found at the scene. Police also discovered a knife with blood on the blade and handle that was on the couch where the initial attack looked to have taken place. In the bathroom, police discovered what appeared to be the young man's clothes in a heap next to the bath. His shoes were covered in long blonde hair that looked to be Kimberly's. The socks in his pants were speckled with blood. Along with all of this, there was a smear of blood in the bath as if someone had tried to wash off there. Woven throughout the cozy family home-turned-crime scene, the police found that the murderer had not only left grisly evidence of the brutal killing, but grisly, taunting notes seemingly addressed to police and to the innocent people who lived inside the home. One was addressed to Desiree, Kimberly's daughter. The twisted letter had been purposefully left on top of the blood trail by the couch. Its demented message read, "Don't lose your head, she may yet live, although I doubt it. Hurry, Desiree. Sincerely, your brother." The person whom police already had in custody, the young man who had confessed to murdering Kimberly with a hammer, was none other than her 18-year-old son, Kevin Jazrael Davis. And not only had he murdered his mother, but he left the cruel note taunting his half-sister. At the time of the murder, Desiree lived in a separate apartment in Corpus Christi with her boyfriend. After the discovery of her mother's body, Desiree came to speak with police. Her boyfriend was also present, though off-screen, for most of the interview. The majority of the following interrogations and photos have never been seen before and have been analyzed by a qualified team, including an individual with a master's of social work, a licensed clinical psychologist, a former licensed professional counselor, and a licensed professional counselor.
Okay, my name is Garcia. No one to be talking to on the phone. I'm sorry I had
Sorry.
stories. Okay. We work in a case right now. Okay, about your brothers.
He killed my mom.
What was the last time you saw your mom?
We just went to...
Understandably, Desiree is heartbroken after finding out that her half-brother killed her mother. It's hard to imagine the pain she's experiencing, and even with that, she's able to compose herself as police begin to question her about her brother.
Where I'm coming from?
Oh, is he on the phone?
He's a police officer in New Jersey also.
Okay.
Talked to me last night.
For what time?
She told me her and Kevin got in a fight. And he was just being disrespectful. And just saying real hurtful things. She called me. She said she called me when she felt stronger.
Okay.
And
Who got in a fight with him?
Kevin. Kevin was just being disrespectful or something. And it was something as simple as, like, this commercial came on for like eHarmony or some dating site or something, and he just out of the blue said, "Yeah, Mom, you gave up on love," and she said, "No, Kevin, I didn't give up on love, but even if I wanted to find love and I couldn't and have anybody over because you're here." And I mean, that's my mom. Really, she loves this kid. You know, she was just. It's not like they had a horrible like relationship. He really. I can't think right now.
Right.
He really has social issues. He was kind of born just different. Like, he had severe ADHD. He really doesn't have any friends. His dad is no good, you know. He came to live with me for a little bit, and she wanted him back, you know, for one last chance. Like, we can make this right to start going to school and stuff. And she just bought him a $100 jacket that she knew he'd just throw on the floor just because she thought he'd like it, you know. She cared about him. She didn't just. My mom's not cruel, you know.
Was Kevin ever abusive to your mom?
No, he was never like physically abusive or anything like that. He would pop off at the mouth and tell her crazy stuff, you know, like, you know, fuck you bad bitch, stuff like that. And she would just like let it eat her alive, you know. Like, yesterday she was just really upset, and I was just trying to calm her down, and she said, "Yeah, you know."
Right.
When's the last time you saw Kevin?
Picture his fucking face right now. The last time I saw Kevin is when we went out to eat. And her and my brother picked me up. And,
What day was that?
I don't know. I have to look back on my phone or something.
But was he acting just like he always does, or was he acting different?
He was acting normal. I'm pretty sure that this is just a spur of the moment type of thing.
He's always had a few issues?
Yeah. Like, when he was little, out of nowhere, like, he would just draw shit that was bad. People getting shot. Stuff like that for no reason.
Has he ever threatened to kill you or your mom?
Never.
Okay.
No. Never.
Well, we're going to tell you this. We haven't told anybody else, but he he wrote some notes before he did what he did.
Oh,
we're worried about you because
You were on the list.
The note that police are referring to here is one of the many that Kevin arranged at the crime scene. Left on his desk, this note detailed his step-by-step plan for murdering not just his mother, but his sister, too. The disturbing plan read, kill mother with garrote. Afterwards, prepare to leave for good, tie up any loose ends. Buy axe from hardware store. Return ASAP and wait until nightfall. Go to Sis's apartment and kill her, anyone else in the way. Leave for the Greyhound bus ASAP. Pack lightly. Laptop and bag. Carry on. Then, in big celebratory letters, he wrote and underlined a single word. Victory.
He was planning on killing your mom and killing you, and then leaving town.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's not. He admits it's not crazy. He admits it. You know,
It was a fantasy.
Got issues.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, he's got issues. That's what he says.
Holy fuck.
You were on the list.
In less than 15 minutes, the detective has pointed out to Desiree twice that she was on the list. It's possible that he's emphasizing this to dislodge any remaining familial loyalty she may feel toward her brother. This may encourage her to be completely honest with him about any warning signs Kevin displayed, or any problems he had in his relationship with his mother.
That's why I was worried about you. I wanted to make sure you were okay. And he said he hadn't hurt you yet.
No.
Yet. Is he your natural brother or is he your stepbrother?
He's my half brother.
Where's his
He's met his dad like one time. My mom did not deserve this shit.
No.
I was telling her last night, you don't deserve this, you don't deserve this. And she was just like, yeah, I don't. I really don't.
Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to give the medical examiner your information, okay? And what you need to do now is...
Identify a liquor?
Yeah, how much family...
My mom, this is fucked up.
This is it. This is them 3 years.
This is the family?
Yeah, this was my family. It was my mom
You need to
and my
do
brother here.
anything you want to ask for us? What you think? We may have an answer if you want.
How is she?
No, I don't want to hear that right now. Really?
All that matters right now is she's expired.
I'm pretty sure he probably put it in the worst way with a hammer and fucking stabbed her to death or something.
Desiree's comment here about how Kevin probably did it in the worst way is unsettling and unexpected. She claimed that she never saw Kevin being physical toward their mother, which makes it surprising that she is so certain that he was unusually cruel or violent in the way he killed her. It's likely that Kevin exhibited behaviors beyond verbal abuse that made Desiree believe he was capable of violence.
How was my brother during all this? Was he just straight-faced?
Yes.
He's here in another room. Okay. He's supposed to doing it. So he admits doing it. He's got no bones about it.
I can't believe it.
Like I said, your brother's a little strange, okay?
I mean, there was issues, you know, like, he would talk about, like, if they get in a fight, like, I'm going to kill myself, you know, blah, blah. And one time my mom did call the police, and they took him to a hospital, and now...
So he's wanted to kill himself in the past?
Yeah.
But he never wanted to kill anybody else?
No, he never said that. I guess they're going to find out now, right, how she died or whatever.
If you're ready for it, I can tell you. If you're ready for it. If not, we can hold on.
I gotta just, like, get it out. I can't just draw this shit out, you know?
You immediately did.
All right.
It's all right now. That's all we have.
That's so fucked up. That's worse than stabbing. That's worse than...
Did she?
Oh, my God.
Yeah, he beat her to death.
Did he say how he was going to kill me?
Huh?
Did he say how he was going to kill me in the letter?
Probably the same way as her.
No.
Okay. But he
Can I
had,
see his face?
he had you in your list.
Can I see his face?
No.
Keep in mind that Kevin would sometimes stay at Desiree's apartment, which made the news of this plan all the more disturbing. Following this, the detective takes Desiree across the hall to fill out forms for the funeral and identification. Desiree's interview painted a helpful, though grim, picture for the police of Kevin's relationship with his mother. It seemed that Kevin had gotten into an argument with her prior to murdering her, and that he'd been acting cruelly toward her for some time. Even so, it was clear to the detectives that because Kevin had absolutely no prior history of criminal violence that anyone was aware of, Desiree never could have expected that Kevin was capable of gruesomely murdering their mother, and planning to do the same to her. As Kevin waits in the room for detectives to arrive, he sits almost motionless for a full minute. The officer in the blue shirt presents Kevin with his written Miranda rights and walks him through them, having him sign the document to ensure he understands what is about to take place. Though it would seem like the killer confessing and writing his plan out on a piece of paper would give the police all the information they needed, the crime scene and confession brought about more questions than answers. Fortunately, law enforcement wouldn't have to dig to get the details of what happened the night that Kimberly was killed. He confessed to every minute detail of his heinous crime. Be warned, the following interview has extremely disturbing and explicit content.
And earlier, you've talked to some people, you want to get some stuff off your chest. We're here to listen to you.
Why are you here? What happened?
And tell us what happened.
Well, has anybody gone to the house yet? Do you really?
We know what happened.
We have, but we want to hear it from you.
Or we have an idea. You're the only one that can tell us. Start at the beginning, man. What caused all this?
Well, the very beginning, I asked my mother for permission to die, or rather kind of commit suicide, the sort of beating around the bush sort of thing. Because, well, that doesn't really matter why I wanted to kill myself.
Sure does. Tell us.
I'm bored with life. I don't like life. I don't like people. I don't like living it, basically. There's really anything depressing about it. It just is what it is. And so I wrote the note.
The note that Kevin is referring to here was one of the most disturbing to be found at the crime scene. This note, titled a life resignation notice, soon after finishing the note, Kevin flipped the page over and wrote out the murder plan referenced earlier. The life resignation notice is dated March 26, 2014 at 6:51 p.m. and reads as follows. I had a change of heart. I said I was going to do it, and so now I need to stick to my word. I am a man after all, albeit a hilarious one. Too much damn work, so many obligations. Seriously, fuck people. But most of all, fuck me. By the way, I've always fantasized about murdering and raping you two. It's kind of funny how you never really know someone, not even your own son or brother. Sorry for the bathroom mess, Mother. Good luck recovering from the shock, you two. Sincerely, or not, Kevin Jazriel Davis. P.S. I killed that stupid gray cat because I was bored one day. Sorry.
I did.
When did you write the note?
Around 6-ish, 7-ish.
Today or yesterday?
Yesterday.
Okay.
That's in the afternoon or morning?
Afternoon.
Okay.
Okay. And then what happened?
And then,
She get upset with you?
well, no, actually. I mulled it over. And then on a whim, actually, I turned it over, wrote a plan to kill both my mother and my sister, quite frankly. That's always been a thing of mine. I'm a bit of a pervert.
Yeah. Is it like a fantasy thing?
It is, actually. So, that didn't happen. The best laid plans never work out, apparently, or at least the one scribbled on a piece of paper, because she had decided she was sick of this stuff. She was going to go send me to live with my sister again. And so I kind of leapt off in a fury and just did it right then and there.
Okay. You did what?
Well, I tried to strangle her with a cord, ripped cord from a video game console controller. That didn't work, huh?
What was your father's finger?
She was sitting on the couch watching TV.
Okay.
That didn't work out too well. She started screaming, and so I went to her room, opened a drawer at the very bottom to the right. I pulled out a hammer. I went back in the living room, and, well, you kind of get the gist from there. And she was out pretty quickly. Kind of tried to play dead at first, but then I finished it.
So you hit her with a hammer when she was sitting in the sofa in the living room?
No, first I tried to strangle her, and that didn't work. Right. She grabbed the cord, so I raced back into her room, grabbed the hammer, came back out, and then did it.
Okay. How many times did you hit with the hammer in the living room?
At least 20.
Kevin reported that his mother was out pretty quickly after he hit her with the hammer, yet he also admitted that he hit her at least 20 times. This is what is referred to as overkill, which means that the killer is going far beyond what is necessary to end someone's life. This may be indicative of pent-up rage. Although cases of a child killing a parent are rare, the use of overkill in those cases is common.
When she was still alive, I dragged her into the room, as you probably clearly saw, and then I kind of warmed my hands into her brains to kind of just cut it. She was still snoring.
Okay. So she was still alive?
She was still alive.
And you went in there and you kind of grabbed those brains?
Yeah, finished it.
All right. So did you use a knife on her?
Actually, I was going to, but no, I didn't get to do that.
I guess you never got to stab her with a knife?
No.
It was all with the hammer?
It was all with the hammer in my hand.
Where did you hit her with the hammer?
The head.
All in the head area?
All in the head, I believe. I may have gotten her hand because she was covering herself.
Okay.
Is this in the front or the back of the head?
Top, back, mainly. No, actually, the entrance wound is around yonder somewhere here.
Okay.
And then, so when you dragged her to the living room, to the bedroom, you kept on hitting her there?
Yeah, I kind of.
That's where that's when you reached in and grabbed her brain?
Yeah, I kicked at it a bit. Then I just, that was kind of silly, but then I just decided to reach in and kind of just do it.
Mm-hmm. And then what did you do after that?
Then I had sex with her corpse.
You did? Okay. Did you come inside her?
I did, actually.
Have you ever done that before, like had sex with her?
No, I haven't, actually.
This is just the first time?
Oh yeah, I lost my virginity to a corpse.
Okay. Did you change in the bathroom? Did you?
I did. I took a bath before then. My penis really, well, that's a little personal, but yeah, I needed to clean it off, and so, and then I changed. Yeah.
Okay. How about your sister? What's your sister's name?
Desiree Hill.
Is she okay?
She is okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Where does she live?
At an apartment actually very near here. That big kind of Hispanic thing. I mean, like Spanish-looking building.
Mm-hmm.
It's an old apartment complex with a code.
Was it a fantasy of yours to kill her as well?
It
and
was.
Did you write down that on your note?
Oh, I did actually, but I decided against it because, well, I'd had my fill of killing. I didn't. Seemed a little much.
Mm-hmm.
A little too excessive. Yeah.
So after you went in and you killed her, and you made sure that she was dead by grabbing her brain and moving it around, then you took her clothes off, or what? Or was she already undressed?
Actually, I had to drag her by her clothes to get her in there. It was very laborious, actually.
Mm-hmm.
She's a pretty big woman, she's heavy.
Yeah.
Hey, is she your natural mother? Biological mother?
Yeah, actually, she is my natural mother.
Okay.
Hey, what kind of thrill did you get by having sex with her?
I'd always loved my mother, I guess in the wrong sort of way, but a kind of love, I guess. Maybe some rage. Maybe just a little.
Kevin referring to his rage and then diminishing it by saying maybe just a little in such a calm way is indicative of the inner turmoil he was experiencing and his struggle to express his emotions clearly.
Yeah.
All right. Have you killed anybody else before?
I have not.
You just fantasized about it?
I just fancy, yeah.
What got you to this point? Tell us about what got you to this point. Did you hate life? You wanted to commit suicide? Oh, what did you say about it when you told her you wanted in a roundabout way to commit suicide? Did you say no? She said yes. What did she say to you?
She said, basically, I'm a grown man, and what I do, she can't really stop me. She was distraught over it, of course. I mean,
Of course.
yeah, she said she'd cope with it. I mean, if you kill, and that's kind of why she wanted me to go away. Why she called my sister to come pick me up, and that's kind of why I just left it.
So at that point, you got pissed?
Not necessarily. I just knew it was time to act now or never.
How long have you had this thought you were in?
It's around my preteens, actually. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you ever seek any kind of medical attention, psychological? You feel like you can cope with that?
Nope, I never really seeked help, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I just accepted it as a part of me. I wasn't really ashamed of it.
Mm-hmm.
It just was what it was.
Let's talk about the notes that you wrote. How many notes did you write?
3.
3. There was one in the living room.
Yeah.
That one was addressed to who?
Desiree, my sister. Because I knew she's a good girl, but rather sensitive. I knew she would lose her head if she kind of saw that.
You remember what the note said?
Keep your head. Hurry. She might still be alive, although I highly doubt it, in parentheses.
Mm-hmm.
Something along those lines, yeah. Sincerely.
But when you wrote the note, you knew your mom was already dead?
Oh, yeah, I knew it. And, you know,
So you were just messing with Desiree by writing that she might still be alive?
Yeah, my sick sense of humor.
Okay.
I was pretty well off my rocker by then.
All right. And then there's a second note in your mom's bedroom. What did that one say? Do you remember?
Chase me.
Was that addressed to the police or to who?
I was in a very playful mood at the time.
Okay.
I just wanted to run. Just wanted to see how far I could get. But,
Yeah. So what? Your plan was to leave town, or what? According to one of the notes that you wrote.
Oh yeah,
But a bus,
yeah,
maybe
the Greyhound bus. I was gonna try to get out of the state or anything really.
Okay. But I guess something else happened. You ended up at somebody's house.
No,
What
actually.
happened?
I told you my plan was foiled because she talked to me. She said my sister's going to come pick me up now, like in a few minutes.
Uh-huh.
Go over with her, and that's when I said it's time to act, now or never.
I see.
I just went over there to their house to use their phone, and then they wanted I was using their phone, so I thought I might as well tell them when they asked me questions. I mean, they had questions on using their phone.
Where was this at? Where did you end up at?
Ultimately, I ended up in the backwoods of a ditch.
Here in town or out of town?
Robstown.
In Robstown. How did you get over there?
In Corpus Christi, I biked halfway, and then I got to the train tracks, and then I ditched the bike in the thick woods, and then from the train tracks, I just walked.
To Robstown?
Yeah.
Okay, and then you came up to the, was it like the first house that you saw, or how did you go to this house to ask to use the phone?
Initially, my plan was just to run as far as I can, but then I ended up crying my eyes out in like the thick woods, like, what did I do? And I realized, you don't know what you lost till you've already lost it.
His comment about not knowing what you have until you've lost it is a common phrase used in grief, though here his lack of emotion indicates that he may not be grieving his mother, but grieving what she's provided for him. He was presumably dependent on his mother financially, so with her gone, he may have realized that jail didn't look too bad compared to living on the streets or hiding in the woods.
What brings you here other than your life? You just give up on life now and you need to tell somebody what happened, basically, right?
I guess, yeah.
Your inside is you want to do one thing, but your inside tells you more, like your heart, right? You're talking out of your heart. You feel sorry you did this to your mom?
In a way, yes, but I wouldn't take back what I did. It's strange, really. I did love her. In a way.
Is she being mean to me?
Oh, no, she's been the best mother.
Okay, so she is nothing that she did?
Oh, absolutely nothing, no.
If I was to ask you, what did she do to deserve this, what would you answer?
Absolutely nothing. I'm a terrible, cruel, disgusting person. Yeah, basically.
How'd you come up with the idea to kill her and have sex with her?
How did I come up with it?
Yeah, was it?
It's been a developing idea in my brain.
After this, the detective asks if books, movies, or video games sparked the idea. Kevin says that the media he consumed didn't plant the seed, but it did egg him on.
Strange.
I'm just interested because it's something unusual and you're here telling us about it and you appear to be a nice guy. You appear to be a good guy. You're not yelling and screaming at
You
us.
seem very rational.
You're very rational. You're appear to be a good guy. This is what I'm trying to figure out, that's all.
Well, despite how I ended her life, I'm kind of more fascinated by the more artistic ways of murder, the meticulous manner, the way they cut them open, just slice them to pieces. I mean, such care, such love. And
Where did the hammer come from that you used?
from her drawer.
Okay.
Yes.
And then after you killed her, you just left it there, the hammer?
I did.
Yes, that's the one you used.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there was some blood in the knife, but you said you never used it. I guess just blood just from where you grabbed it or on the.
Oh, that knife. Actually, I used that to stir her brains up a little, but then that didn't really work out, so I just kind of decided to delve on it.
Did you do that in the living room or the bedroom? Because we found that it wasn't in the bedroom.
I may have started out.
So,
Yeah, actually, I used the knife in the living room, and then didn't I take it with me?
so her brains were already kind of coming out in the living room when you dragged her?
Yes, but she was still snoring like a baby, and so I just kind of dragged her.
Explain to her how you grabbed her so that you wouldn't leave such a mess in the carpet.
That
Did you carry her from underneath the arms and just dragged her, or how did you drag her?
it was very sloppy, actually. I kind of just winged it. I dragged her from her shirt. I dragged her by her legs. I dragged her by any way I kind of felt.
Okay.
I don't really exert physical labor, too, so I'm not a very strong person.
Should be very hard.
Yeah,
You have your own bedroom there?
I do.
Okay. All right. So the note where you wrote the plan that you were going to leave town and kill your mom, kill your sister, that was the one that we found there. We found it in one of the bedrooms. Not where your mom was, but the other one. That was your room?
Yeah,
Two-bedroom apartment?
The big, blank,
Yeah.
floppy looking, yeah.
Okay. But your sister didn't live with you guys?
She did.
Did you ever tell anybody else what your plans were? That, what you wanted to do to your mom or your sister?
No, but over the years, there were hints. As a younger boy, I was a lot dumber, a lot more angsty. You know, I said things, but I guess they basically brushed it off. I guess the hints were everywhere, but they're my family. Family looks past that kind of stuff, or they try to not look at it.
Mm-hmm. At this point, what do you consider yourself? You consider yourself, I'm going to use a dirty word, okay, but I don't mean to insult you, okay? Do you consider you mentally disturbed? Do you consider yourself crazy? What do you consider yourself, any of those? Or you think you're okay? You just got some bad thoughts?
I'm not mentally disturbed. I mean, I'm sane. I know exactly what I did. I know that it's wrong, in the traditional sense of wrong.
Hello.
It was just a fantasy you had, and you had to carry it out.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you still feel like well, you're done with your mom. Do you still feel like you want to keep on killing?
I came here to pay for my crimes, so I guess I should continue with the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Truthfully.
Yes, definitely.
I would kill again.
Mm-hmm.
How about us? I think you want to kill us.
Oh, no. Rather, men aren't my thing, actually.
Women.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a girlfriend?
I don't. I've never had a girlfriend.
I'll tell you what, give me your fancy of killing a woman. What would your fancy killing would be? Your ace killing, what would that be?
This is a little peculiar among him. Okay,
I'm not surprised at what I'm going to hear, but you tell me.
maybe dressing up in a nice suit, sneaking into her house, disabling her boyfriend. You know, yeah, I'd bring a pretty dress with me to dress her up in. I was always into strangling, but after that last blunder, I guess maybe something big and sharp would be more along my thing. Mm-hmm. I don't know, probably decapitate her, as I prefer my women dead.
Kevin seems to enjoy thinking about and expressing his fantasy. His admission that he prefers his women dead and that men aren't his thing is an indication that the process of murder is something arousing for Kevin. This suggests that he may have sexual sadism disorder, which involves recurrent and intense sexual arousal from the physical or psychological suffering of another person. It's manifested in fantasies, urges, or behaviors. In addition, his comment about preferring women dead stands out for another disturbing reason. A woman who is alive could potentially reject him, but a deceased victim can't. He may feel safer assaulting a deceased victim because he can do anything he wants without fear of being refused or spurned. He gets to be all-powerful and in complete control.
I'd dress her up. I'd stitch her up. Kind of try to work the head back on, perhaps. And then I'd go to town, and it would be a night to remember. Mm-hmm. And then I'd kind of just burn everything and run for the hills.
You mentioned that you lost your virginity to a corpse.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about that? What happened?
Oh, well, just last night, my mother, yeah.
Okay, not somebody else. You talked about your mom.
Yes.
Okay, so before that, you had never had sex?
Well...
Kevin takes a long pause here to decide how much he wants to reveal to the detectives. What he's about to disclose to them takes his sickness to another level. And yet he remains nonchalant as he tells them the horrifying truth.
I guess since I'm being quiet about it, I might as well tell you now. It's on the note too, the PS part. We used to have a gray cat named Claire. Oh yeah, BCL is a thing of mine too. Mm-hmm. Now you know. And so I strangled it, I drowned it, and then I cut it open, and you know the rest. Mm-hmm. I get the rest.
You had sex with the cat, with the dead cat?
Yeah, ripped it open, stuck it in there. Yeah.
You ever had sex with a live person?
No.
So that your thing of having sex with a live person that doesn't turn you on, it's the dead thing, dead person, dead animals. That's what turns you on.
I don't necessarily mind. I don't have standards or morals. Mm-hmm. Body's a body, and in the end, piece of meat. I guess it's harsh to say, but...
Kevin disclosing that he sees a body as nothing but a piece of meat makes the probability that he has antisocial personality disorder highly likely because of his flagrant disregard for all life.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't necessarily mind.
How about the idea of hurting yourself? Do you have the same idea now?
Huh?
Do you have the same idea that you want to hurt yourself, commit suicide?
No, it's over for me. I'll face the music. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
There's not a happy ending for me yet.
Well, tell me, what do you think should happen to you? What do you think your punishment should be?
Whatever the judge, the people, jury deems fit, I can rot, I can suffer for years, or I can be given the death penalty, whatever they think is for me.
What do you think you deserve? Killing your mom? Having sex with your mom?
I deserve to rot and suffer. I mean, it is what it is.
Okay, I want to give you some options here. Okay. 10 years probation, 20 years in the pen, 100 years in the pen. What do you prefer from those series?
100.
The maximum. Right?
I suppose. I mean,
I admire your mind, man. You don't sit here and try to baby yourself to death.
came here to face the music. I guess gotta.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, brother, man.
Anything else you want to add about what happened that's important that we should know?
Not really. I'm sure interested in other colorful details.
Have you ever heard your sister?
No, I haven't.
No.
Anybody else?
No.
You haven't ever killed anybody else or anything else?
Oh, no. Yeah, that was my first.
You ever been on Blucher Street?
Hmm?
You ever been on Blucher Street?
If you referring like
Blucher Street?
Blucher Street.
You know where Blucher Park is?
I haven't.
It's a large area of Karankawa.
It's down the street here in the uptown area. I had a woman that was killed back then. So.
Oh, no, not me.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
This is the first time you're seeing, right? That you killed somebody?
Yeah.
A person, not an animal?
Yes.
Do you want to know what's going to happen to you now?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Very simple. You're going to be booked at the county. First, you take the city vicinity. You're charged with murder. Then you will be transferred over to the county, where, of course, you'll go to the county jail. They'll set a bond for you and everything else. And if you can afford to get out of jail, that means so be it. And if you can't, sit there until your trial. And there may not be too proud of you.
Oh, of course. I don't expect people to think very highly of me after this.
Hey, but like I said, I admire you for your honesty. You were honest with us, and you didn't cut the bullshit.
Following Kevin's confession in his interview, he was arrested. Though at first he pleaded not guilty to murdering his mother just as his trial began, he entered a guilty plea. According to his attorney, he was offered a sentence of 60 years in prison, but Kevin refused. Perhaps it's because he truly thought he deserved more time, or maybe it's because, for some deeply misguided reason, he thought he was going to escape the charges altogether. At the trial, the jury was shown Kevin's interview in its entirety and also heard some additional details. A psychiatrist that analyzed Kevin told the jury that Kevin reportedly said the consistency of his mother's brain tissue felt like putty, and apparently he even mentioned something about tasting the brain. It's no surprise that after that, it only took the jury an hour to deliberate and find him guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison, and at the time of this video's posting, he resides at the John Montford Psychiatric Unit in Lubbock, Texas. It's unknown if he received a mental health diagnosis sometime after his arrest, but his placement in the psychiatric facility makes that seem likely.
Too much to take their father away from them. State of Utah versus Corey Richens. Miss Richens is present. After deliberating for just under 3 hours, the jury informs the court they have come to an agreement. The court is informed that the jury has reached a verdict. Would you please hand the verdict form to the deputy? Miss Richens, please stand. Count 1, aggravated murder. We, the jury, unanimously find that the defendant, Corey Richens, is guilty of aggravated murder. Corey Richens is found guilty on all counts. The entire 3 hours was constant, robust, electrifying discussion. There were some people who were sort of on the fence with some of the elements, like they felt that she was guilty, but maybe the state did not meet the burden. And so we focused on what some of those issues were. They gave them pause, and then we all discussed at length. And that helped us kind of come to the conclusion. And it helped people jump off the fence. To convict a woman of murder was absolutely heartbreaking. Corey friend Allie Staking watched the verdict live online.
Guilty.
Eric was my friend, too. I did not choose Corey over Eric, but now I have lost both of them, and she was somebody that meant a lot to me, and her family meant a lot to me, and they meant a lot to me, and it is a loss. Nobody wins in this. After the verdict is read, Eric family and friends gather outside of the courthouse and embrace each other. What are you feeling? Relief. Justice is served. Justice. For years ago, our family lost the brightest light. Eric is deeply loved and missed every single day. We are grateful to everyone who has worked tirelessly to bring justice for Eric.
Our focus is now on
honoring Eric's life and supporting his boys as we all continue to heal. Thank you all for being here. In a statement to ABC News, the Richens family wrote that the justice system has now fairly run its course, and we believe the jury verdict was just and accurate. There is a hole in our family that cannot be filled. But now, at least we have definitive closure. Corey Richens will return to that courtroom to learn her sentence on May 13th, which is no ordinary
day.
That would have been Eric Richens' 44th birthday. She faces up to life in prison, and her legal troubles are far from over. She is facing a whole other criminal indictment with multiple counts of mortgage fraud, money laundering, forgery, bad checks. These are serious allegations. One of the real tragedies in this case is Eric and Corey kids. Their father tragically passed
away.
Their mother parental rights have been terminated. She has forever lost her children. Those children have been adopted by one of Eric's sisters. There are
3 little boys at the heart of this.
They are just love. They have a lot of love surrounding them. They are great boys, and they're going to be fine.
He
was an amazing father, brother, son, nephew, person, friend. He was an amazing person with the most contagious laugh out there. I will remember Eric's laugh if I
can hear it in my head.
He needs to be remembered as just a loving dad. He had so much more life to live, and he wanted so much for his boys. I am going to remember just how much he loved them. And that is our program for tonight. Thanks for watching. I am David Muir, and I am Deborah Roberts. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, good night. The Silent Oak, the Chronicle of Nancy Woodrum. The Central Coast of California possesses a landscape that seems almost to have been conjured from the dreams of a romantic painter. In the region of Paso Robles, the earth rises and falls in golden hills, punctuated by the ancient, twisted limbs of valley oaks and coast live oaks. It is a terrain of quiet majesty, where the morning fog rolls in from the Pacific Ocean, blanketing the vineyards in a cool, silver mist before the midday sun burns it away to reveal rows of deep green vines. The very name of the town, derived from El Paso de Robles, whispers of its heritage as the Pass of the Oaks. For generations, this has been a place of quiet refuge, a sanctuary halfway between the frantic urban expanses of San Francisco and Los Angeles. It was a town where people came to escape the noise of the world, to ride horses through the chaparral, and to live in harmony with the gentle rhythms of the earth. Yet, down El Faro Road, nestled deep within this idyllic beauty, a sudden and terrifying silence fell in the spring of 2018. At the heart of this quiet corner of Paso Robles lived Nancy Woodrum.
At
62 years of age, Nancy was more than merely a resident of the valley. She was a beloved thread in the very fabric of the community. With a warm smile and an open heart, she operated a popular downtown hair salon known as the Strand. To her clients, Nancy was a confidant, a source of steady comfort, and a woman who possessed a rare, generous spirit. She had known deep sorrow in her life, having lost her husband some years prior, yet she carried her grief with a quiet dignity anchored by a profound and devout faith. As one of Jehovah's Witnesses, she lived with a gentle but unshakable hope in a future paradise, a belief that guided her interactions with everyone she met. Nancy's sanctuary was Paradise Ranch, a property she and her late husband, Robert, had purchased in 2006. It had begun as a modest fixer-upper, a rustic ranch-style home surrounded by the rugged beauty of the Paso Robles hills. Together, they had worked tirelessly to transform the property, building a beautiful two-story Victorian-style main house with wraparound porches shaded by a majestic weeping willow. In time, the property became a popular vacation rental, a place where travelers could experience the quiet peace that Nancy so deeply cherished. She lived nearby in a modest, detached cottage on the property, content in her solitude, surrounded by her beloved horses and the wildlife of the valley. On Friday, the 4th of May, 2018, a wedding party checked into Paradise Ranch. It was a joyous occasion. A group of more than 20 guests, including the bride and her bridesmaids, arrived to celebrate a vineyard wedding. Nancy, with her characteristic warmth, welcomed the bride with a hug, offering the hospitality of the ranch before retreating to her own cottage. The evening progressed with the gentle sounds of laughter and preparation, a celebration of new beginnings in a fairy tale setting. But the following morning, Saturday, the 5th of May, the peace of Paradise Ranch was shattered. The first indication of trouble came when Nancy failed to appear for a scheduled morning Bible study. For a woman of Nancy's absolute reliability and devotion, such an absence was deeply alarming. Her daughter, Amanda, who shared both her mother's profession as a hairstylist and her deep love for horses, felt an immediate, cold dread. Amanda contacted a neighbor and asked her to check on her mother. When the neighbor arrived at Nancy's cottage, she found a scene that was instantly haunting. The front door was flung wide open. Inside, the television was blaring into the empty room, casting a flickering, artificial light across the space. There was no sign of Nancy. Amanda rushed to the property. As she stepped into her mother's home, the details of the scene began to paint a terrifying picture. Everything remained exactly as Nancy had left it, yet the central figure of the home was missing.
On
the floor, there was an ominous, dark stain on the carpet.
the sheets and
Bedding from Nancy's bed were gone. When Amanda looked closer at the walls, she saw what appeared to be tiny droplets of blood spattered against the surface. Frantic and trembling with panic, she reached for her telephone and dialed 911. The emergency dispatch recording captured the raw terror of that moment. Amanda reported a missing person, her voice shaking as she explained that her mother-in-law had not been seen and that there was blood on the pillow.
the
Dispatcher, recognizing the gravity of the situation, immediately dispatched deputies to El Faro Road. Within hours, the quiet vacation rental was transformed into a bustling, taped-off crime scene. Police cruisers lined the gravel driveway, their red and blue lights flashing against the oak trees. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors beating a rhythmic, anxious path across the sky, while search dogs sniffed through the brush. The wedding guests, who had gone to bed the night before in a peaceful paradise, awoke to find themselves in the middle of a real-life mystery, their idyllic retreat suddenly populated by investigators and forensic technicians. Among the first to arrive was Clinton Cole, a reserve detective with the San Luis Obispo County Sheriff's Office. An experienced investigator with a calm, methodical demeanor, Detective Cole immediately sensed the gravity of the situation. As he approached Nancy's cottage, he noted the open door. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that whoever had entered had either been known to Nancy or had taken her by surprise. Inside the cottage, the evidence of a violent struggle was unmistakable. Detective Cole observed 2 large blood stains on the floor. On a nearby bench sat Nancy's purse, her car keys, her tablet computer, and her mobile phone. Her 2 vehicles remained parked outside. On the bed, a beige pillow bore a significant transfer of blood, and there was additional blood spatter on the headboard, the adjacent cabinet, and the back wall. To Detective Cole, the scene spoke with absolute clarity. Nancy Woodrum had been assaulted in her own bedroom and taken from her home against her will. This was not a simple missing persons case. It was a kidnapping and, potentially, something far worse. As the sun began to set on that first agonizing day, investigators faced a daunting task. They had a crime scene but no victim and a suspect pool that was overwhelmingly large. More than 20 wedding guests had been staying on the property, mere yards from Nancy's cottage. In a rural, secluded area like El Faro Road, any one of these individuals had to be considered a potential person of interest. Then, a crucial discovery was made several miles away. An officer with the California Highway Patrol contacted the sheriff's office. While driving along La Ponza Road, approximately 6 to 7 miles from Nancy's residence, the officer had spotted several items discarded on the roadside. The items consisted of a pillow, a gingham print bedding set, a woman's dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. The evidence was immediately brought to the crime lab. When forensic technicians examined the bedding, they found extensive blood stains. The gingham pattern matched the remaining bedding in Nancy's cottage. Amanda was brought into view. The clothing, with a breaking heart, she confirmed that the items belonged to her mother. The discovery painted a grim picture. It suggested that Nancy had been wrapped in her own bedding, placed in a vehicle, and transported away from her home. The fact that the bedding and clothing had been discarded on the roadside suggested a frantic, disorganized attempt to dispose of evidence, but it offered no clue as to where Nancy herself had been taken. Detectives focused their attention on the wedding party. They systematically interviewed every guest, seeking any detail, however small, that might explain what had occurred in the dark hours of the night. It was an overwhelming process, made more difficult by the emotional distress of the guests who were caught between the joy of a wedding and the horror of a criminal investigation. One guest in particular drew the attention of the investigators. He had not attended the rehearsal dinner on Friday night, claiming instead to have stayed behind at the ranch. His timeline was vague, and when detectives attempted to conduct a follow-up interview, his cooperative demeanor vanished. He became evasive, expressing reluctance to assist further. To the investigators, this sudden resistance was a significant red flag. They decided to travel to his home in Northern California to conduct a third, unannounced interview. This time, the guest was cooperative, explaining that his previous frustration had been born of stress. His wife produced photographs from her mobile phone showing him at the rehearsal dinner, resolving the confusion about his whereabouts. He voluntarily provided a sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid, which ultimately cleared him of any involvement. As the first week of the investigation drew to a close, the search for Nancy expanded into the surrounding foothills and the dry riverbed that ran behind her property. Search and rescue teams, accompanied by helicopters and volunteers from the community, combed through the rugged terrain, looking for any sign of the beloved salon owner. Amanda and her friends searched the culverts along La Ponza Road, holding on to a desperate hope that Nancy, a known fighter, was still alive and waiting to be found. Meanwhile, investigators began to look beyond the wedding party. Nancy had recently decided to sell Paradise Ranch, finding the upkeep of the large property to be too demanding. She wished to devote her time fully to her faith, teaching others about the Bible. Because of the impending sale, a number of contractors, painters, plumbers, and landscapers had been working on the property in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. Among the evidence left in Nancy's cottage was her tablet computer case, which was surrounded by pamphlets, notes, and telephone numbers. One of those numbers belonged to a painter named Carlo Fuentes Flores. When Detective Cole first contacted Carlo, the painter was polite, cooperative, and friendly. He confirmed that he had been working on the property and had seen Nancy on the Thursday before she disappeared. He spoke warmly of her, recalling that she had complimented his hard work and had even given him a tamale. There was nothing in his demeanor to suggest he was anything other than a hard-working, mild-mannered craftsman. Detectives also focused on a general contractor named Sean Bloom, who had recently been dismissed by Nancy following a heated dispute over the quality of his work and payment. Bloom had expressed his frustration in text messages, threatening legal action to secure his money. He was interviewed extensively and, demonstrating his innocence, voluntarily provided a sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid, which did not match the evidence found at the scene. The investigation then turned, as investigations often must, to those closest to the victim. Rumors of a strained relationship between Nancy and her son, Chad, began to surface. Chad had distanced himself from the family's faith, and the relationship had become bitter, to the point where they had not spoken in years. And Nancy was not permitted to see her grandchildren. Furthermore, forensic analysis of Nancy's phone revealed that Chad had sent her a text message on the night she disappeared. When approached by detectives, Chad was defensive and flatly refused to provide a voluntary sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid. Suspicious of his refusal, investigators placed Chad under surveillance. They watched as he consumed several beverages at a local establishment, placed the empty containers in his vehicle, and drove away. He was subsequently stopped for driving with an open container. While the charge was eventually dismissed, the plastic bottles he had discarded were collected and sent to the laboratory. The analysis cleared Chad of any connection to the crime. By the end of the summer, the investigation had stalled. Every lead had been pursued, every suspect interviewed, and yet Nancy remained missing. The community was growing anxious and frustrated, believing that the case was turning cold. It was at this point of desperation that the investigators decided to utilize a relatively new and pioneering forensic tool, Google geofencing. Detectives knew, thanks to a telephone bill analysis, that a 911 call had been attempted from Nancy's phone at exactly 17 minutes past midnight. On the night she disappeared, the call had lasted for 0 seconds, indicating it had been disconnected almost instantly. This gave investigators an incredibly precise time and date stamp for the crime. Using this information, detectives secured a search warrant for Google, requesting location data for any mobile devices that had been active within a virtual boundary or geofence drawn around Nancy's cottage during a specific window of time on that fateful night. It was a complex legal and technological process, one of the first of its kind, to be utilized in the state of California. For months, investigators waited for the data to be processed. In November, the results finally arrived. The geofence data provided a map of coordinates, represented as unique device. Numbers assigned by Google. Investigators systematically eliminated the devices belonging to the wedding guests whose locations had already been verified. Then they saw it. Deep within the virtual fence, positioned directly inside Nancy's studio. Cottage was a single active device. It had pinged at 33 minutes past 1 o'clock in the morning and again at 52 minutes past 1 o'clock. This was the exact window of Nancy's disappearance. The device did not belong to Nancy. Investigators secured a subsequent warrant to obtain the subscriber information for the device. A few days later, Detective Cole received the telephone call. That would change everything. The device belonged to Carlo Fuentes Flores, the polite, mild-mannered painter who had spoken so fondly of Nancy and her. Tamales had been inside her home in the dark hours of the night. Armed with this critical piece of evidence, detectives began a deep dive into Carlo's life. They discovered that the devoted father and husband possessed a dark and secretive double life. A forensic analysis of his internet search history revealed a preoccupation with adult material involving older women, as well as searches for escorts in various cities. On his mobile phone, investigators found numerous self-shot videos of sexual encounters with various women, revealing a predatory behavior completely hidden from his employers and family. To secure an arrest, investigators needed physical evidence to link Carlo directly to the crime scene. Specifically, they needed to compare his deoxyribonucleic acid with the unknown male profile that had been recovered from the bloody partial handprint on Nancy's pillow. Detectives placed Carlo under close surveillance. They followed him as he went to a local restaurant with his wife. They watched as he finished a bottle of soda, left it on the table, and departed, because the bottle had been discarded. In a public space, investigators were legally permitted to retrieve it without a warrant. The bottle was rushed to the forensic laboratory. The results were definitive. The deoxyribonucleic acid on the soda bottle was an exact match to the profile found on the bloody pillow in Nancy Woodrum's bedroom. On a cold morning, Carlo Fuentes Flores was brought into the interrogation room at the sheriff's North Station in Templeton. The interrogation began quietly. Detectives asked Carlo about his work on the property, establishing his familiarity with the layout of Paradise Ranch and Nancy's cottage. Carlo maintained his friendly, cooperative demeanor, reiterating that he did not know where Nancy stayed and had only heard of her disappearance from his employer. Then the investigators shifted their approach.
They let Carlo know that they
had conducted a thorough investigation and that they possessed scientific evidence placing him in the cottage on the night of the crime. At that moment, the facade crumbled. Detective Cole watched as Carlo's body language changed dramatically. The quiet confidence vanished, replaced by visible trembling. Carlo looked at the detectives and said, "I want to be honest with you guys.
I
know that I made a mistake." He then proceeded to tell a story designed to minimize his culpability.
He
claimed that he had returned to the property late at night to retrieve a ladder.
For his next job,
As he was backing his vehicle up, he claimed he did not see Nancy walk up behind him and accidentally struck her. Panic-stricken, he claimed he carried her inside the cottage to help her, where she subsequently collapsed. But the physical evidence did not support a tragic vehicular accident. Detectives pressed him on the blood spatter and the sexual nature of the crime. Under the weight of the evidence, Carlo finally admitted to the truth.
he
Confessed that he had gone to Nancy's cottage with the intent of sexually assaulting her. He had entered her home, attacked her as she slept, explaining the blood spatter on the walls and headboard, and violated her. When she attempted to resist and call for help, he had suffocated her with a pillow, leaving the bloody handprint that would ultimately prove to be his undoing. With the confession secured, there remained one vital question. Where was Nancy? Detectives placed Carlo in the back of a police cruiser.
For over an hour, they
Drove east from Paso Robles, moving away from the fertile vineyards and into the arid, rugged terrain of the Carrizo Plain. The search was tense and frustrating. Carlos struggled to remember the exact location in the vast, featureless landscape, stopping at several different spots as doubt began to creep into the minds of the investigators. Finally, they stopped along a remote road. Detective Cole looked out across the dry brush and spotted a small, unnatural pile of rocks. As they approached, the grim truth was revealed. There, scattered by the elements and local wildlife, lay the skeletal remains of Nancy Woodrum.
Carlo
Had not even possessed the basic decency to bury her. He had simply left her body in the open wilderness, covered by a few loose stones. Upon seeing the remains, Carlo fell to his knees and wept, expressing a sudden, desperate remorse. He asked the detectives to tell his young daughter that he
was sorry for his mistake.
But for Nancy's family, the grief was absolute, tempered only by the small comfort that she had finally been found. In January of 2022, rather than face a lengthy trial and the potential for a death sentence, Carlo Fuentes Flores chose to enter a slow plea. The prosecutor presented the overwhelming evidence, and the judge found him guilty of first-degree murder with the special circumstance of committing the murder during a rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For Amanda and the community of Paso Robles, the scar of Nancy's loss remains. Yet, her memory lives on in the golden hills she so dearly loved. Amanda continues the tradition of riding horses through the valley, often riding Montana, the very horse her mother once rode, finding a quiet, enduring connection to the mother who was taken too soon, but whose spirit remains as steady as the ancient oaks. The Grief Novelist, The Chronicle of Eric Richens. The mountains of Summit County, Utah, rise like jagged teeth against the immense western sky. In the winter, the valleys are choked with deep, pristine snow, attracting the wealthy and influential to the luxury retreats of Park City. It is a place where wealth is often on display, where modern architectural marvels of glass and stone cling to the hillsides, overlooking historic mining towns that have been transformed into playgrounds for the affluent. It is a sharp, contrasting world where rustic Western heritage meets immense financial ambition. In this mountain valley, on a freezing night in March of 2022, a voice of frantic distress broke the silence of the early morning. At approximately 3 o'clock in the morning, Corey Richens placed a desperate call to 911. She reported that her husband, Eric, was cold to the touch and was not breathing. When emergency responders arrived at the beautiful, spacious home in Camas, they found Eric Richens lying on his back on the bedroom floor. He possessed no pulse. Paramedics immediately began cardiopulmonary resuscitation, the rhythmic, mechanical sound of the compression machine filling the tense room as deputies began to question Corey. Corey, a young, attractive mother of 3 boys, appeared to be in deep shock. She explained to the officers that they had been celebrating a major financial milestone for her real estate business earlier that evening. To toast her success, she had prepared a mixed drink for Eric before retiring to sleep in one of her son's bedrooms, as the child was suffering from night terrors. When she returned to their master bedroom hours later, she claimed she found Eric cold and unresponsive to the initial responders, the sudden death of a healthy, athletic 39-year-old man was deeply perplexing. An emergency medical technician on the scene wondered aloud if Eric had suffered an aneurysm, pointing to a small amount of blood that had appeared during chest compressions. Eric's sister, Katie, arrived shortly thereafter, her raw, guttural screams of grief echoing through the home as the reality of her brother's death set in. At 3 o'clock and 58 minutes past midnight, Eric Richens was officially declared deceased. In the days that followed, the community rallied around the young widow. Corey presented herself as a picture of tragic elegance, navigating her sudden loss, while caring for her 3 young sons, aged 10, 9, and 6. But behind the scenes, a quiet, bitter warfare was already beginning to unfold between Corey and Eric's family. The tension erupted into open hostility just 2 days after Eric's death. Believing that her husband's will was stored in a safe in their home, Corey hired a locksmith to gain access to the secure vault. When Eric's sister, Amy, discovered the locksmith at the house, a violent physical confrontation ensued. Amy accused Corey of punching her in the face, a charge that resulted in Corey's arrest and a subsequent plea of no contest to assault. It was during this confrontation that the Richens family dropped a devastating financial bombshell. Eric had secretly altered his estate plans and trust prior to his death. He had completely removed Corey as a beneficiary, leaving his successful stone masonry business, C&E Masonry, and their family home to a trust established solely for his 3 sons. Furthermore, he had appointed his sister, Katie, as the executor of the estate. Corey was outraged. She had spent years building a life with Eric, and now she found herself facing a reality where she was largely cut out of his fortune. Yet, to the public, Corey maintained her role as a grieving, devoted mother. Recognizing the profound struggle her young boys were experiencing as they processed the loss of their father, Corey decided to write a children's book. The book, titled Are You With Me?, was designed to help children cope with the devastating loss of a parent, written from the perspective of a child wondering if his father is still present in his life. The book offered comforting reassurances that the deceased parent was still watching over them, cheering at soccer games and clapping from afar. Corey dedicated the book to her amazing husband and a wonderful father, featuring an illustration of their family of 5 on the final page. In March of 2023, on the anniversary of Eric's death, Corey embarked on a media promotional tour. She appeared on local television programs, her voice trembling with emotion as she spoke of her grief and her desire to help other families navigate the dark waters of loss. The hosts praised her vulnerability and strength, holding her up as an inspiration. But the public sympathy was destined to be short-lived. Just days after her television appearance, the television station received an anonymous, chilling email. Written in bold, capital letters, the message contained a single, terrifying accusation: she killed her husband. While Corey had been promoting her book, the medical examiner's office had been quietly completing a meticulous forensic investigation. The results of Eric's autopsy had finally returned, and they were shocking. Eric Richens had not died of an aneurysm. He had died of acute drug intoxication. Specifically, the toxicology report revealed that Eric had 5 times the lethal dosage of fentanyl in his system. Furthermore, the chemical analysis indicated that the drug was not medical grade. It was illicitly manufactured fentanyl, the type produced by illicit laboratories and sold on the streets. The autopsy report transformed a sudden death into a homicide investigation. Detectives from the Summit County Sheriff's Office began a deep dive into the couple's life, discovering a marriage that was far from the perfect all-American image they presented to the world. Eric's family immediately voiced their suspicions to law enforcement. They revealed that Eric had been deeply concerned about Corey's financial management. In 2020, Eric had discovered that Corey had secretly taken out a $250,000 line of credit against their family home, which he solely owned. This discovery had devastated Eric and shattered his trust in his wife. In response to this betrayal, Eric had consulted a divorce attorney and quietly established the secret trust, ensuring that his business and property would go directly to his children in the event of his death, shielded from Corey's mounting debts. Indeed, investigators soon discovered that Corey was drowning in a sea of financial ruin. Her ambition to build a real estate empire had led her to acquire a massive, unfinished luxury mansion in Midway, Utah, for nearly $3 million. To fund the purchase and ongoing renovations, Corey had turned to high-risk, short-term hard money loans. At the time of Eric's death, Corey owed over $4,500,000. dollars to more than 20 different lenders. She was desperate for a massive influx of cash, and she believed that Eric's estate would provide the financial salvation she so desperately needed. As investigators dug deeper, a pattern of suspicious behavior began to emerge. They discovered that Eric had fallen violently ill on previous occasions, and that he had suspected his wife of attempting to poison him. In 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric had ordered a non-alcoholic beverage due to medication he was taking. After taking a drink prepared by Corey, he became violently ill, prompting him to call his sister and express his fear that Corey was trying to kill him. Then, on Valentine's Day of 2022, just weeks before his death, Corey had purchased a bagel sandwich from a local establishment and brought it to Eric. After taking a single bite, Eric suffered a severe, near-fatal reaction. He was forced to use his son's epinephrine injector and consume large quantities of antihistamines to survive. He texted a close friend later that day, writing, "I think she might have poisoned me." The breakthrough in the case came when investigators began analyzing Corey's phone records. They discovered that she had been in frequent communication with a woman named Carmen Lauber, a cleaning lady who possessed a significant history of drug offenses. Detectives placed Carmen under surveillance and subsequently executed a search warrant at her home, discovering drug paraphernalia and a firearm. But the most chilling discovery was a copy of Eric Richens' obituary, carefully taped to a mirror in her home. Facing severe drug and weapons charges, Carmen agreed to cooperate with investigators. She revealed that in early 2022, Corey had contacted her, asking her to procure strong prescription pain medication for an investor who had suffered a back injury. Carmen claimed she obtained hydrocodone pills and delivered them to Corey. Shortly thereafter, Corey contacted her again, stating that the investor wanted something stronger, specifically some of that Michael Jackson stuff, referring to fentanyl. Carmen admitted that she purchased illicit fentanyl pills from a local dealer and delivered them to Corey's home. The transaction had occurred just days before Eric's near-fatal Valentine's Day illness. Finally, Carmen admitted she delivered a second batch of fentanyl pills to Corey. On the 26th of February, just days before Eric was found dead. On the 8th of May, 2023, Corey Richens was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and multiple counts of possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. The arrest shocked the nation, the grieving widow, the devoted mother, the children's book author who had spoken so eloquently about processing grief, was now accused of being a calculating, cold-blooded killer who had poisoned her husband to escape her debts and claim his fortune. As Corey awaited her trial in the Summit County Jail, the evidence against her continued to mount. During a routine search of her cell, deputies discovered a handwritten, 4-page letter hidden in her mattress. The letter, which began with the phrase, "Walk the dog," appeared to be a detailed set of instructions for her mother to relay to her brother, Ronnie. Corey instructed her brother to testify that Eric had obtained pain pills and fentanyl from Mexico, attempting to create an alternative narrative to explain the lethal drugs in his system. Prosecutors argued the letter was clear evidence of witness tampering, while the defense insisted it was merely a draft for a fictional manuscript. The heat was turned up even higher when investigators uncovered a second, powerful motive, an ongoing, years-long affair. Detectives learned that Corey had been involved in a passionate relationship with a handyman named Josh Grossman. Forensic recovery of deleted text messages revealed that Corey and Josh communicated almost daily, expressing their deep love for one another and their desire for a future together. In February of 2022, just weeks before Eric's death, Corey had sent a message to Josh writing, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect." 48 hours before Eric was found dead, Corey sent a final, cryptic text to her lover. "Hang in until Friday. Life is going to be different. I promise." In early 2025, the murder trial of Corey Richens began in a small courthouse nestled in the mountains near Park City. The courtroom was packed with media, onlookers, and the families of both the victim and the accused. The prosecution, led by Brad Bloodworth, presented a meticulous case. They laid out the overwhelming financial debt, the secret trust, the history of poisoning attempts, the drug deliveries by Carmen Lauber, and the passionate text messages to Josh Grossman. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when Josh Grossman himself took the stand. Looking broken-hearted and deeply uncomfortable, he verified the authenticity of the romantic text messages. He then revealed a chilling conversation he had with Corey in her car in the weeks following Eric's death. According to Josh, Corey had looked at him and asked if he had ever killed anyone during his military service in Iraq, and subsequently asked how it had made him feel. When the prosecution rested its case after 13 days of powerful testimony, the courtroom held its breath, waiting to see how the defense would respond. Corey's new legal team, Kathy Nestor and Wendy Lewis, stood before the judge. To the absolute shock of everyone in the courtroom, the defense announced that they were resting their case without calling a single witness. They believed that the prosecution had failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt how the fentanyl had actually been introduced into Eric's system, pointing to the lack of physical forensic evidence in the home. Corey waived her right to testify. The jury deliberated for just under 3 hours. When the verdict was read, Corey Richens stood silently, her hands clasped. Before her, the jury was unanimous: guilty of aggravated murder, guilty of insurance fraud, and guilty of mortgage fraud. For the Richens family, the verdict brought a quiet, profound sense of justice, though it could never fill the empty space left by Eric's absence. His 3 young sons, who had been the inspiration for a book about grief, were placed in the custody of Eric's sister, surrounded by a family determined to raise them with the love and honor their father had always shown. Eric's legacy would not be defined by the betrayal of his wife, but by the laughter of his boys and the enduring memory of a dedicated father who loved them until he could no longer. The Hidden Hand, the Chronicle of Robbie Dorr. The city of Evansville, Indiana, sits along a sweeping bend of the Ohio River, a historic manufacturing hub where quiet neighborhoods of brick bungalows and modest ranch homes line the streets. It is a city that prides itself on its strong sense of community, its hardworking citizens, and its deep respect for the public servants who keep it safe. On a freezing night in late February of 2019, the quiet of this Midwestern town was shattered by a sudden burst of violence. Robbie Dorr was a man who embodied the very best of Evansville. For nearly 3 decades, he had served as a firefighter, a respected leader within the department who had trained generations of rookies. He was a true hero, recognized throughout the community for once rescuing a young child from a burning building. To his fellow firefighters of Engine 1, Robbie was invincible, a man of quiet integrity who gave 100% to every run he made. Like many firefighters, Robbie worked multiple jobs to support his family, including managing a local restaurant. It was there that he met Elizabeth, known to everyone as Becky. Becky was a woman who had known a turbulent life, having been adopted into a foster home at a young age and subsequently married 5 times before meeting Robbie. She dreamed of a picture-perfect life, a stable home where she could be a stay-at-home wife. Robbie was instantly smitten. After asking her eldest son for permission to date her, Robbie and Becky were married in a beautiful ceremony on the sandy beaches of Florida in the late summer of 2018. Robbie was ecstatic, believing he had finally found the partner he had searched for his entire life. He stepped in to be a devoted father to Becky's 3 children, who quickly came to view him as their hero. But the honeymoon was destined to be tragically brief. On the evening of Tuesday, the 26th of February, 2019, Robbie arrived home after working a grueling 12-hour shift at the fire department. As his truck pulled into the driveway of their home on Oakley Street, the headlights cut through the cold darkness. Inside the house, Becky was preparing a dinner of thick-cut pork chops and macaroni and cheese. She saw the headlights sweep across the window. Within a minute, a series of loud pops echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Becky placed a frantic call to 911, reporting that her husband had been shot and that there was blood everywhere. When police officers and paramedics arrived, they found Robbie lying on the cold concrete of his driveway. He possessed a faint pulse, and emergency responders immediately began chest compressions. But the injuries were too severe. Robbie Dorr was pronounced dead. On the scene, the news of Robbie's murder sent shockwaves through the Evansville Fire Department. Firefighters rushed to the scene, their grief turning to raw, unyielding anger as they watched their beloved leader being carried away. A procession of fire trucks, their red lights flashing in silent tribute, escorted Robbie's body to the coroner's office. Initially, Investigators were baffled. Robbie had no known enemies, and there were no obvious motives for his execution. The crime scene yielded no shell casings, suggesting the killer had been meticulous, leaving only a single damaged projectile in the roadway. But the breakthrough came during the autopsy. The forensic pathologist recovered a mixture of ammunition from Robbie's body, including jacketed projectiles, ball projectiles, and plastic wadding. Firearms experts immediately recognized this unusual combination. Robbie had been shot with a Taurus Judge, a unique, high-powered revolver known as a cannon, capable of firing both traditional pistol rounds and shotgun shells from the same cylinder. Armed with this critical clue, detectives began a systematic search for the weapon. They discovered that a Taurus Judge had recently been stolen from a local pawn shop. The employee who had access to the firearms at the time of the theft was a young man named Larry Richmond Jr. Detectives quickly drew a line connecting Larry Jr. to the Dorr family. His father, Larry Richmond Sr., was currently living in a romantic relationship with Becky's younger sister, Mandy. Furthermore, a criminal history search of Larry Sr. revealed a terrifying detail. He was currently on probation after serving 20 years in prison for a prior murder conviction. The investigation began to focus on the relationships within the extended
family.
While Becky and Robbie had presented an image of marital bliss, investigators discovered a note written by Robbie to Becky, expressing his deep insecurity and his belief that she was being unfaithful. Robbie had confided in his friends that Becky constantly deleted her text messages and refused to let him see her phone. On the night of the funeral, a massive service attended by hundreds of firefighters from across the state, detectives made their move. They conducted a coordinated sweep, pulling over Larry Sr. and Mandy as they departed, and bringing Becky in for a formal interview. During her interrogation, Becky maintained her story, claiming she had been cooking dinner when she heard the shots. But investigators confronted her with her mobile phone records. The records revealed that Becky had received a 4-minute telephone call just 5 minutes before Robbie was killed. Becky had deleted the record of this call from her phone. Under intense pressure from the detectives, Becky finally admitted that the call had come from Larry Richmond Sr. She claimed she had deleted the call simply out of habit and because she did not want police to suspect they were having an affair. Meanwhile, Larry Richmond Jr., facing federal weapons charges for the pawn shop theft, decided to cooperate. He revealed a devastating piece of evidence. His father had buried a box of firearms in the backyard of the home he shared with Mandy. Investigators descended on Mandy's property, conducting a massive search of the backyard. They excavated the ground near a fire pit and recovered a plastic container filled with handguns. While the specific murder weapon was not among them, the discovery of the buried arsenal confirmed Larry Sr.'s access to illegal firearms. The final piece of the digital puzzle was recovered by the high-tech crime unit. After months of painstaking work, digital forensics experts successfully cracked the passcode to Larry Richmond Sr.'s iPhone. The location data painted a chilling picture of his movements on the night of the murder. In the hour leading up to the shooting, Larry Sr.'s phone was tracked, lingering in the immediate vicinity of Robbie's home, moving through the alleyways behind the property. At 46 minutes past 6 o'clock, he placed the call to Becky, who informed him that Robbie would be home shortly. Immediately following that call, Larry Sr. powered his phone off. At 7 o'clock and 5 minutes, Robbie pulled into his driveway and was ambushed. Neighbors reported seeing a tall man sprinting away from the scene. At 11 minutes past 7, a local surveillance camera captured Larry Sr. arriving at a nearby convenience store, dressed only in a sleeveless t-shirt in the freezing cold. At 14 minutes past 7, he powered his phone back on. The digital evidence proved with absolute certainty that Larry Richmond Sr. had been waiting in the darkness of the alley, armed with the Taurus judge, waiting for the signal from Becky that Robbie was about to arrive. In late 2021, Becky Fox Dorr was put on trial for murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The prosecution, led by Diana Mowers, presented the digital timeline and the testimony of Becky's own son, Nathan, who revealed that his mother had repeatedly questioned him about Robbie's pension and life insurance policies on the very night of the murder. The jury found Becky guilty on all counts, and she was sentenced to 90 years in prison. The trial of Larry Richmond Sr. followed, despite his defense team's attempts to explain his location data. The jury deliberated for 11 hours before returning a verdict of guilty. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. For Robbie's daughter, Lindsay, and his fellow firefighters, the verdicts brought a solemn, enduring peace. Robbie's legacy remains alive in Evansville, honored by a brand new fire engine dedicated in his name, a rolling monument that continues to protect the citizens of the town he loved, while the empty driveway on Oakley Street stands as a silent testament to the relentless pursuit of truth. The Cold Waters of Huron County, the Chronicle of Regina Hicks. The landscape of northern Ohio is a tapestry of flat, fertile farmland, where massive fields of corn and soybeans stretch to the horizon, broken only by quiet farmhouses and small railroad towns. It is a region where life moves slowly, where traditions are deeply rooted, and where the local sheriff's office is often the steady anchor of the community. In this quiet country setting, a terrifying, spectacular event in the summer of 2015 would set off a chain of events that would solve a cold case dating back nearly a quarter of a century. In the early morning hours of June 18, 2015, firefighters in Goshen, Ohio, responded to a massive structure fire. The home, a ranch-style house belonging to a railroad foreman named Paul Hicks, was completely engulfed in flames. As firefighters crawled through the thick, black smoke, they made a highly unusual discovery: 2 5-gallon gasoline cans left sitting in the middle of the living room and bedroom. Arson investigators were immediately dispatched. When Paul Hicks arrived on the scene, he was cooperative, explaining that he had been staying at a hotel hours away for his job. He revealed that he possessed a state-of-the-art surveillance system, which had survived the fire because the recording unit had been stored inside a fireproof gun safe. The recovery of the surveillance footage provided investigators with an extraordinary, clear look at the crime. The infrared cameras captured a man and a woman, dressed in protective white suits, entering the home and carrying out a television. The woman possessed distinctive, long, curly blonde hair. At one point, she stopped directly beneath the camera, looking up to reveal her face. Paul Hicks immediately identified the woman as his ex-girlfriend, Kelly. He claimed they were embroiled in a bitter custody dispute over their young son, and that Kelly had been harassing him. To support his claim, he produced a prior surveillance video showing Kelly damaging his hot tub and phone records, indicating she had called him nearly 100 times on the night of the fire. Based on this evidence, Kelly was arrested at a local grocery store during a scheduled custody exchange. But as the civil and criminal investigations progressed, a private investigator representing Allstate Insurance, Zach McCune, began to notice significant inconsistencies in the case. Kelly was extremely cooperative, voluntarily giving a sworn statement and providing her actual cell phone records. The hard records from her carrier revealed that she had not made 100 calls to Paul on the night of the fire. She had only called him 5 times. Investigators realized that the calls showing up on Paul's phone had been generated using an internet application called Spoof Card, which allows a user to mask their true identity and display any phone number they choose. The IP address used to place the calls was traced to a mobile phone owned by a former girlfriend of Paul Hicks. Furthermore, a search of the former girlfriend's financial records revealed 2 stunning purchases: a long, curly blonde wig from a local shop and a custom-made rubber mask purchased from a website called That's My Face. The photos used to create the custom mask were identical to those found on Paul Hicks' social media accounts. The evidence painted a mind-blowing picture of deception. Paul Hicks had purchased a custom mask of his ex-girlfriend's face, hired 2 accomplices to wear the mask and a blonde wig, and set fire to his own home in an elaborate scheme to frame Kelly and secure sole custody of their son, while pocketing a massive insurance payout. The insurance company successfully sued Paul for fraud, securing a $400,000 judgment. Paul subsequently pleaded guilty to insurance fraud and was sentenced to probation. But the exposure of Paul's elaborate, vengeful nature caught the attention of investigators in Huron County, more than 100 miles away. They remembered Paul Hicks from a dark, unsolved mystery that had haunted the railroad town of Willard since October of 2001. Regina Rowe was a vibrant, fun-loving young woman who loved country music and fast cars. She had married her high school sweetheart, Paul Hicks, and together they had a young son named Montana. But the marriage had grown increasingly volatile.
Paul was controlling and
abusive, attempting to isolate Regina from her family. In the summer of 2001, a fire destroyed their family home. After receiving a $60,000 insurance settlement, Regina found the courage to file for divorce, using her portion of the money to purchase a distinctive white Camaro. She was finally reclaiming her independence, smiling and laughing again. But on the evening of Thursday, the 18th of October, 2001, Regina disappeared. She had been scheduled to pick up 4-year-old Montana from Paul, who was staying at the home of his best friend, Steve Gates. She never arrived. 4 days later, a farmer riding an all-terrain vehicle near a rural pond spotted something unusual resting in the center of the deep water. Sheriff's deputies and divers descended on the scene, pulling a white Camaro from the muddy depths. Inside, on the passenger side of the vehicle, lay the body of Regina Hicks. The positioning of her body immediately raised significant red flags. Her feet were tucked neatly beneath the passenger side console, and her body was crumpled in a way that suggested she had been placed there. The driver's seat was pushed completely back, accommodated for a much larger person, and the driver's window was down. The autopsy revealed 3 blunt force strikes to the top of her scalp, not enough to kill her, but sufficient to render her unconscious. The cause of death was drowning. She had been alive but unconscious when the car was driven into the freezing pond. Paul Hicks was the immediate prime suspect, but he possessed a seemingly solid alibi. Steve Gates testified that Paul had been at his home waiting for Regina, who never showed up. Despite the intense suspicions of Regina's mother, Lawsella, who erected billboards and pleaded for justice until her death from cancer, the case went cold for over 15 years. The breakthrough came when a local true crime podcaster, Ashley Ford, began a series of investigative episodes on Regina's murder. The podcast galvanized the community, putting intense pressure on the Bureau of Criminal Investigation to reopen the case. Detectives focused their attention on Steve Gates, the lifelong friend who had provided Paul's alibi. Sensing that the net was closing in and facing the reality of Paul's exposed arson plot, Gates' attorney contacted prosecutors, offering a full confession in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Steve Gates finally sat down with investigators, and the truth of that terrible night was finally revealed. Gates admitted that Regina had indeed arrived at his home on the night of her disappearance. She and Paul had engaged in a violent argument in the driveway. Gates, wanting no part of the conflict, had retreated to his garage, turning up the music to drown out the noise. When he emerged minutes later, he saw Regina's Camaro parked near the road.
Paul
was standing next to the open passenger door. Gates looked inside and saw Regina's unconscious, crumpled body. Panic-stricken, Gates urged Paul to call 911, but Paul refused, telling Gates, "You're involved now." Paul got behind the wheel of the Camaro, while Gates followed in Paul's vehicle. With young Montana sleeping in the back seat, Gates watched as Paul drove the Camaro directly into the deep, dark waters of the pond, leaving his wife to drown in the passenger seat. On the ride back, Paul had used his phone to place a call to Regina's mobile phone, attempting to create a digital alibi showing he was still trying to reach her. In April of 2024, Paul Hicks was arrested and indicted for the murder and kidnapping of Regina Hicks. The trial in Huron County was a dramatic, emotional affair. The prosecution presented the testimony of Steve Gates. The muddy boots recovered from the scene, and the testimony of Paul's sister, who recalled seeing Paul with scratches on his face and his muddy clothes soaking in the bathtub on the night of the murder. The defense argued that the state's case was built entirely on the testimony of a confessed liar who had secured an immunity deal, but the jury deliberated for only 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty on all counts. At his sentencing, Montana, now a young man who had grown up under the shadow of his mother's murder and his father's deception, submitted a heartbreaking statement expressing the profound pain of losing both his mother and his father to a senseless act of violence. Paul Hicks was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. For Kelly, who had spent years fighting to clear her name, and for the Rowe family, the verdict brought a profound, tears-filled relief. Regina Hicks was finally resting in peace, her vibrant spirit remembered not by the cold waters of a forgotten pond, but by the enduring love of her family and the triumph of a relentless pursuit of justice. The quiet town of Paso Robles, California, has long been celebrated for its rolling hills, ancient oak trees, and sprawling vineyards.
Known historically as
El Paso de Robles, or the Pass of the Oaks, the region sits halfway between the bustling metropolises of San Francisco and Los Angeles. It is a place of natural sanctuary, where people escape the frantic pace of modern life to find solace in the scenic beauty of the Central Coast. Yet, down a secluded stretch of El Faro Road, amidst this pastoral dream, an unsettling mystery unfolded in the spring of 2018 that would challenge the peace of this close-knit
community.
At the heart of the community was Nancy Woodrum, a 62-year-old woman who ran a popular downtown salon called The Strand. Nancy was a fixture of the area, known by her clients and neighbors for her radiant warmth, her generous spirit, and her deep devotion to her faith as a Jehovah's Witness. Since the passing of her husband Robert several years prior, Nancy had lived alone in a modest cottage on her property, which she affectionately called Paradise Ranch. Together, she and her late husband, who had been a contractor, had lovingly remodeled a 2-story Victorian home on the land, turning it into a welcoming vacation rental. Nancy loved horses, the outdoors, and the peaceful hope of a beautiful future. On Friday, the 4th of May, 2018, a large group of wedding guests checked into the main Victorian house at Paradise Ranch. They had traveled to Paso Robles to celebrate a marriage at a local winery, looking forward to a weekend of joy and celebration. The bride, who had selected the Ranch Online found Nancy to be incredibly welcoming, greeting her with a warm embrace and explaining that she would be staying nearby on the property if they needed anything. The weekend began with the promise of a fairy tale. By Saturday morning, however, the fairy tale began to unravel. Nancy's daughter, Amanda, received a concerning phone call from a member of her mother's congregation. Nancy had failed to appear for a scheduled morning Bible study, an absence that was entirely out of character for a woman so deeply committed to her faith. Growing anxious, Amanda contacted a neighbor and asked her to check on Nancy's cottage. Within minutes, the neighbor called back with chilling news. The front door of the cottage was wide open, the television was blaring, but Nancy was nowhere to be found. Amanda rushed to the property, her heart heavy with dread. When she approached her mother's apartment, she found everything left exactly as if Nancy had departed in a hurry. Her purse, keys, cellular phone, and electronic tablet were still resting on a bench in the entryway. Her 2 vehicles remained parked outside. But as Amanda stepped further into the bedroom, she noticed a dark stain on the carpet. Looking closer, she saw that the sheets and blankets had been stripped from the bed, and there was what appeared to be blood spattered on the walls and the headboard. In a state of sheer panic, she called 911. The local authorities responded immediately, recognizing that Paradise Ranch had transformed from a peaceful vacation destination into a potential crime scene. Senior Deputy Degnan and other responding officers quickly secured the area, setting up crime scene tape and launching a massive search effort. Helicopters circled above the wooded hills, and search dogs scoured the rugged terrain, stretching toward the dry riverbed behind the property. For the wedding guests, the weekend of celebration was abruptly halted as they realized they were now residing in the middle of an active homicide investigation. With over 20 guests staying on the property, investigators faced a daunting challenge. Every person present was, by default, a potential person of interest. The case took a dramatic turn that very evening. An alert officer with the California Highway Patrol, patrolling La Panza Road approximately 6 to 7 miles from the ranch, discovered a pile of discarded bedding and clothing on the side of the road. The items included a pillow, a gingham print sheet, a dress, a pair of shorts, and a shirt. Recognizing the potential significance of the find, the officer notified the sheriff's office. Investigators retrieved the items and brought them to the forensic laboratory. Amanda later looked at the clothing and confirmed, with a breaking heart, that the items indeed belonged to her mother. The gingham sheet matched the remaining bedding in Nancy's cottage. It appeared increasingly likely that Nancy had been wrapped in her own bedding, severely injured or deceased, and transported away from her home. Faced with a massive pool of potential suspects, detectives began the grueling task of interviewing every single wedding guest. They focused initially on the possibility that an outsider visiting for the weekend might have committed a crime of opportunity. One guest in particular drew suspicion when he became defensive and uncooperative during follow-up phone calls. Eager to clear up the anomaly, detectives traveled to his residence in Northern California to conduct an unscheduled interview. The guest, once confronted in person, explained that his initial frustration was due to the stress of the situation, and his wife provided photographs confirming his presence at the rehearsal dinner on the night of Nancy's disappearance. He voluntarily provided a sample of his deoxyribonucleic acid, and he was officially cleared. Investigators also turned their attention to local individuals who had recently interacted with Nancy. Amanda mentioned a contractor named Sean Bloom, who had been hired to perform repairs on the property to prepare it for sale, as Nancy had planned to sell the ranch to focus full-time on her ministry. The working relationship had grown highly contentious, resulting in Sean being dismissed from the job without immediate payment. When interviewed, Sean openly admitted his dislike for Nancy and his frustration over the unpaid funds, but he cooperated fully and voluntarily provided his genetic material, which did not match the evidence found at the scene. Even Nancy's family was subjected to close scrutiny. Detectives looked into her son, Chad, with whom Nancy had a strained and distant relationship. They had exchanged text messages on the night she vanished, and Chad's initial refusal to provide his genetic material raised red flags. Under surveillance, investigators observed Chad consuming beverages at a local establishment, retrieved the discarded bottles, and submitted them for laboratory analysis.
Chad, too, was
cleared of any involvement. As the weeks turned into months, the investigation began to stall. The public grew anxious, and the family despaired of ever finding answers. It was during this period of frustration that investigators decided to employ a relatively new and sophisticated investigative tool, one that had rarely been used in the state of California at the time. They turned to Google to execute a geofence search warrant. By utilizing the exact coordinates of Nancy's cottage and the precise timeline established by a brief, interrupted 911 call made from her landline at 12:17 in the morning, detectives established a digital boundary around Paradise Ranch. Google returned data showing which cellular devices had active location services enabled within that virtual boundary during the critical hours of the crime. The geofence data revealed several devices belonging to the wedding guests, all of whom had already been cleared. But when investigators zoomed in on Nancy's studio, they discovered a single cellular device that pinged inside her walls at 1:33 and again at 1:52 in the morning. This was the exact window of time they believed the perpetrator was on the property. Detectives immediately obtained a subscriber warrant for the device and received a name that sent shockwaves through the department. Carlo Fuentes Flores.
Carlo
Was a local painter who had been hired to work on the property.
He had been
interviewed early in the investigation and had been described as extremely polite, mild-mannered, and cooperative. He was a father and a husband who had worked in the local trades for 20 years with an unblemished record. Armed with this new digital evidence, detectives placed Carlo under close surveillance. They followed him to a local restaurant where he had lunch with his family, and once he departed, they retrieved a soft drink bottle he had used. The laboratory extracted his genetic material from the bottle and compared it to a crucial piece of evidence from Nancy's bedroom. A forensic specialist, performing a detailed examination from atop a ladder, had previously identified a faint, partial handprint on a pillow found in the cottage. The genetic material from the handprint matched Carlo Fuentes Flores. On the day of his interrogation, detectives brought Carlo into the interview room. Initially, he maintained his polite demeanor, claiming he knew nothing of Nancy's fate and recalling only how kind she had been to him, even offering him food while he worked. However, as detectives gradually revealed the depth of their evidence, letting him know they had proof of his presence on the night of the crime, Carlo's posture collapsed. He confessed, initially claiming he had accidentally struck Nancy with his vehicle while retrieving a ladder in the dark, and had carried her inside to help her. Detectives pressed further, challenging the physical impossibility of his story. Carlo finally admitted to the truth. He had returned to the property late at night with the intention of assaulting Nancy. He entered her cottage, attacked her as she slept, raped her, and then smothered her with a pillow to prevent her from identifying him. He then wrapped her body in her bedding, loaded her into his vehicle, and drove east. In a poignant moment during the interrogation, Carlo offered to lead the detectives to Nancy's remains. They drove for over an hour into the remote, arid landscape of the Carrizo Plain. After searching several locations, Carlo pointed to a small stack of rocks in the brush. There, investigators discovered Nancy's remains, which had been left exposed to the wilderness. Carlo fell to his knees, weeping and expressing regret, asking the detectives to tell his young daughter that he was sorry for his terrible mistake. To avoid the prolonged pain of a trial for Nancy's family, Carlo Fuentes Flores agreed to a slow plea. In January of 2022, the judge reviewed the compiled evidence, including the recorded confessions and jailhouse phone calls, and found Carlo guilty of first-degree murder with a special circumstance of rape. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. While the family would forever carry the weight of their loss, they found comfort in knowing Nancy was finally laid to rest, her memory kept alive by her daughter Amanda, who continues to ride their beloved horses through the beautiful hills of Paso Robles. The theme of deception disguised as grief would find an echo in another mountain community hundreds of miles away in Summit County, Utah, in the town of Camas. Nestled near the affluent resort destination of Park City, another family's life was shattered under circumstances that seemed, at first, to be a sudden medical tragedy, but soon revealed a calculated plot born of financial desperation and secret betrayal. In the early morning hours of March 4th, 2022, Corey Richens, a 33-year-old mother of 3 young boys, placed a frantic 911 call. She reported that her husband, 39-year-old Eric Richens, was cold to the touch and not breathing. Emergency responders arrived at their beautiful family home to find Eric lying on the floor of the master
bedroom.
Despite their efforts to perform cardiopulmonary resuscitation, Eric was pronounced dead at the scene. An emergency medical technician noted a small amount of blood near his mouth, raising the initial hypothesis of a sudden brain aneurysm. To the outside world, Eric and Corey Richens were the epitome of the successful all-American family. Eric was a dedicated father, a youth soccer coach, and the owner of a highly successful stonemasonry business called C&E Masonry.
Corey
Was an ambitious real estate agent who ran a property flipping business. They lived a life of affluence, taking lavish vacations and participating actively in their community. Yet, behind this facade of prosperity, a bitter financial conflict was reaching a boiling point. The day before Eric's death, Corey had been celebrating what she viewed as her grandest business achievement, the purchase of a partially constructed, multi-million-dollar mansion in Midway, Utah, which she planned to complete and sell for a massive profit. Eric, however, had been highly conservative regarding their finances and had resisted the purchase, viewing it as an unnecessary risk. Following Eric's funeral, the fragile peace between Corey and Eric's family shattered. Corey attempted to hire a locksmith to open a safe in the home, believing it contained Eric's will. This action led to a physical altercation with Eric's sister, Amy, who revealed a stunning secret. Eric had secretly altered his estate planning documents 2 years prior. He had transferred the ownership of his business and their home into a trust, naming his sister Katie as the trustee and his 3 sons as the sole beneficiaries, effectively cutting Corey out of his major assets. Eric had taken this drastic measure after discovering that Corey had secretly obtained a $250,000 line of credit by forging his signature on their home's mortgage. The tension escalated when the medical examiner's toxicology report was completed. Eric had not died of an aneurysm. Instead, his system contained 5 times the lethal limit of illicit fentanyl, a powerful synthetic opioid. The discovery launched a full-scale homicide investigation led by the Summit County Sheriff's Office. As detectives dug into Corey's background, they uncovered a dark, double life.
A
Private investigator hired by the Richens family, working alongside sheriffs. Detectives analyzed Corey's communication records. They discovered frequent text messages and phone calls to a woman named Carmen Lauber, a cleaning lady who worked on Corey's real estate projects and had a history of drug-related offenses. Detectives executed a search warrant at Carmen's residence and made an unsettling discovery. A copy of Eric's obituary was taped to a mirror.
Faced
with significant drug and firearm charges, Carmen agreed to cooperate with the authorities. She revealed that Corey had approached her on 2 separate occasions prior to Eric's death, requesting strong prescription pain medication.
Carmen
admitted to procuring illicit fentanyl pills and leaving them at various real estate properties for Corey to collect. She noted that after the first delivery, Corey had requested even stronger pills, claiming they were for an investor with a back injury. The timeline of these drug acquisitions lined up with suspicious health crises Eric had experienced. In 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric had become violently ill after consuming a drink, prompting him to call his sister and express fear that his wife was attempting to poison him. More recently, on Valentine's Day of 2022, Corey had purchased a sandwich for Eric from a local bagel shop. After taking a single bite, Eric suffered a severe allergic reaction, requiring him to use his son's epinephrine auto-injector and ingest antihistamines before falling into a deep sleep. He texted a friend later, stating that he believed his wife had tried to poison him. Detectives also uncovered evidence of an ongoing affair between Corey and a handyman named Josh Grossman. Text messages between the two revealed a passionate relationship, with Corey promising Josh that her life would be different soon, urging him to hold on until the Friday of Eric's death.
She had
Even texted him about a dream of divorcing Eric, securing millions of dollars, and living with Josh in the guest house of the Midway Mansion. In May of 2003, Corey was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and possession of controlled substances with intent to distribute. Her attempts to project the image of a grieving widow, including self-publishing a children's book on grief titled Are You With Me? And appearing on local television programs, were laid bare as a calculated performance. While awaiting trial in the Summit County Jail, Corey's writing habits continued. During a routine search of her cell, deputies discovered a handwritten, 4-page letter addressed to her mother, containing instructions to have her brother, Ronnie, fabricate a story claiming Eric had obtained the fatal fentanyl during trips to Mexico. The prosecution utilized this letter as evidence of witness tampering, further sealing her fate. In 2024, after a highly publicized trial during which the defense rested without presenting any witnesses, the jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. Corey Richens was found guilty of aggravated murder and the attempted murder of her husband. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her 3 young boys, the tragic center of the storm, were placed in the custody of Eric's sister, ensuring they would grow up surrounded by the memory of their father's genuine love. While the mountains of Utah witnessed the tragic unraveling of a family built on financial ambition, a similar drama of secret betrayals and ultimate justice was playing out in the Midwestern city of Evansville, Indiana. There, the target was not a wealthy businessman, but a beloved public servant whose life was dedicated to protecting others. On a freezing night in February of 2019, Robbie Dorr, a 49-year-old veteran firefighter with 28 years of service, returned home to his residence on Oakley Street after completing a 12-hour
shift.
As he pulled his truck into the driveway, a figure stepped from the Shadows. Within seconds, a succession of gunshots rang out through the quiet neighborhood. Robbie's wife, Elizabeth Fox Dorr, known to many as Becky, called 911. Her voice filled with panic as she reported finding her husband lying in the driveway, surrounded by blood. Emergency responders, including many of Robbie's fellow firefighters, rushed to the scene. Despite their desperate attempts to administer aid, Robbie succumbed to his wounds. He had been shot multiple times, including a fatal wound to the head. The loss of Robbie Dorr sent shockwaves through the Evansville community. He was a highly respected leader in the fire department, known for mentoring rookie firefighters and saving lives throughout his long career. At his massive funeral, fire trucks lined the streets, and a traditional bagpipe procession honored his memory. Yet, behind the scenes, homicide detectives were already uncovering inconsistencies in the story presented by his grieving widow. During the initial processing of the crime scene, investigators were puzzled by the absence of shell casings in the driveway. The autopsy revealed that Robbie had been struck by a mixture of jacketed bullets, ball projectiles, and plastic shotgun wadding. A firearms expert identified this unique combination as characteristic of a Taurus judge, a specialized revolver capable of firing both traditional handgun ammunition and shotgun shells from the same cylinder. Detectives began constructing a digital whiteboard of Robbie's social circle. They discovered that Becky, who was not employed and relied entirely on Robbie's multiple jobs to support her lifestyle, had been married 5 times previously. Their 6-month marriage had been plagued by financial strain and mutual
distrust.
Robbie had recently written a note expressing suspicion that Becky was deleting her text messages and engaging in infidelity. The breakthrough in the investigation came when detectives traced the origin of the unique firearm. They discovered that a Taurus judge had recently been stolen from a local pawn shop. The employee suspected of the theft was Larry Richmond, Jr. Further investigation into the family revealed that Larry's father, Larry Richmond Sr., was a convicted murderer currently on probation, who was living with Becky's younger sister, Mandy. Detectives brought multiple family members in for simultaneous interviews. During her interrogation, Becky denied having any contact with Larry Richmond Sr., claiming her sister's fiancé was merely a family acquaintance. However, a forensic analysis of her cellular phone records revealed a deleted 4-minute phone call between Becky and Larry Sr., placed just minutes before Robbie pulled into the driveway on the night of his murder. Mandy, Becky's sister, initially provided an alibi for Larry Sr., claiming he was at home with her all night. However, when confronted with evidence of Larry's extensive infidelities with multiple other women, Mandy admitted she did not know his exact whereabouts during the hour of the shooting. Furthermore, neighbors provided investigators with home surveillance footage showing Larry Richmond Sr. carrying a large plastic storage bin into the backyard of Mandy's residence and burying it near a fire pit shortly after the murder. Officers executed a search warrant and excavated the yard, recovering several firearms, Larry Richmond Jr. ultimately cooperated with the authorities, admitting that his father had requested the stolen Taurus Judge. The digital evidence compiled by the high-tech crime unit proved definitive. Investigators successfully bypassed the security passcode on Larry Richmond Sr.'s encrypted smartphone. The location data placed his device slithering through the alleyway behind Robbie's home in the hour leading up to the execution, proving he was lying in wait for the firefighters' return. Becky's financial motivations became clear when her son, Nathan, testified that his mother had repeatedly questioned him about the status of Robbie's fire department pension and life insurance policies on the very night of the murder. In 2022, Becky Fox Dorr was brought to trial, convicted of murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and sentenced to 90 years in prison. Later that year, Larry Richmond Sr. was also convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The community of Evansville honored Robbie's legacy by dedicating a new fire engine in his name, ensuring his spirit of service would continue to protect the city he loved. The theme of a carefully constructed mask hiding a dark, violent past was illustrated most vividly in the state of Ohio, where an investigation into a suspicious house fire eventually unlocked the vault of a 24-year-old cold case homicide. In June of 2015, fire crews in Goshen Township, Ohio, responded to a massive structure fire at an investment property owned by a railroad foreman named Paul Hicks. The home was engulfed in flames, with fire blowing out of every window and door. During their search of the interior, firefighters crawled over several 5-gallon gasoline cans, prompting them to call for arson investigators. Paul Hicks, who was working in another part of the state at the time, quickly arrived at the scene. He assisted investigators in retrieving a digital video recorder from a fireproof safe in the home. The surveillance footage captured 2 individuals dressed in white protective suits entering the home, carrying gas cans, and removing a television before the house erupted in a massive explosion. Paul immediately pointed the finger at his ex-girlfriend, Kelly, with whom he was engaged in a bitter child custody dispute. He claimed Kelly had been harassing him, showing investigators her phone number on his incoming call logs over 90 times on the night of the fire. He also provided older surveillance footage of a woman with long, curly blonde hair damaging his hot tub, claiming it was Kelly. Based on this evidence, local police arrested Kelly during a custody exchange. Kelly, however, vehemently maintained her innocence. She insisted she was asleep at her mother's home miles away during the fire.
Her claims were supported by an
insurance investigator named Zach McCune, who began analyzing the digital evidence. McCune discovered that the phone calls displaying Kelly's number on Paul's phone had actually been routed through an internet-based spoofing application designed to disguise the caller's identity. The internet protocol address used to access the application belonged to an associate of Paul Hicks. Further investigation into Paul's financial records revealed a purchase of a high-quality wig matching Kelly's hairstyle,